and now we're going to continue with our series of Introductory Microeconomics. And today with me, Mahima, you are going to learn elasticity. So thank you for joining in, and let's understand everything about elasticity. So firstly, what is elasticity? So elasticity generally measures the change in one thing with respect to the other. For example, the first type of elasticity that we are doing is price elasticity of demand. Okay, so price elasticity of demand means कि price के change होने से demand कितना change हो रहा है. Price elasticity of demand, price change होता है तो demand कितना change होता है. So generally it is defined as the responsiveness of quantity demanded of a good to a change in the price. Okay. Formally, the definition of elasticity is the percentage change in the quantity demanded from a 1% change in price. Okay. So अभी के लिए इतना ही समझते हैं that if price changes by 1%, 1% से price change होता है तो demand कितने से change होता है? क्या demand same change होगा for different goods? So if price of cars change by 1%, demand कितने से change होगा? If prices of socks changes by 1%, demand कितने से change होगा? If price of onions change by 1%, तो demand कितने से change होगा? That is what elasticity tells us. It helps us identify कि अगर हम किसी भी चीज का प्राइस हम ज्यादा चार्ज करते हैं या कम चार्ज करते हैं, कुछ गेन होगा या कुछ नुकसान होगा, बेनिफिट होगा या लॉस होगा, राइट? दैट्स व्हाट वी आर मेजरिंग विद इलास्टिसिटी. ऑलराइट, सो इसे एक डायग्राम की तरह के जैसे दिखते हैं. दिस इज अ डिमांड कर्व. ओके, एक डिमांड कर्व पे पहले एक पॉइंट है. द फर्स्ट पॉइंट दैट केम, let's call this point A. Okay, so point A पर there was a particular price in particular quantity. So let's say this is the market for socks. Okay, so पहले socks जो आती थी वो let's say 50 rupees for a pair की आती थी, and उस पे 1000 unit of socks बिकते थे. Okay, you sold 100 units, 1000 units of socks when the price was 50. अब अगर आपने प्राइस बढ़ा दिया, उसको 60 rupees पड़ गया, तो क्या होगा? क्वांटिटी कम होगी for sure, because that's the law of demand. अगर प्राइस बढ़ेगा तो क्वांटिटी घटेगी. Correct? That's the law of demand. So that is for sure. But the question is, by how much? Would it fall down to half? वो क्या 500 हो जाएगा? Or would it fall down to 900? Would it fall down to 700? How much will the quantity fall by? That is the job of elasticity to tell us. So percentage change in quantity comes in the numerator. Percentage change in price comes in the denominator. And finally, what you get is elasticity. Okay, so in this case, the elasticity is 5. Okay, 0.5. 1 by 2 is the elasticity, 0.5. So what is the meaning of 0.5 elasticity? 0.5 elasticity का मतलब है कि अगर 1% प्राइस बढ़ा तो क्वांटिटी आधा % चेंज होगी. Okay, that's the meaning of elasticity. तो अगर आपने 10% प्राइस बढ़ाया, so what is the price increase here? The price increase here is 20%, 50 to 60 हो गया. Right? The price increases 20%. अगर price increase होगा 20%, तो quantity कितने से fall करेगी? उसका आधा, 10% से fall करेगी. मतलब the correct answer is 900. Okay? So if you increase the price of socks from 50 to 60, the fall in quantity will be from 100 to 900. Right? So that is what elasticity is. It is very important for us to know what is elasticity before we change the price of any good. All right, let's move further. So उसको लिखते कहते हैं elasticity को. Elasticity को हम ऐसे लिखते हैं. It's the percentage change in quantity demanded divided by the percentage change in price. All right, so this is the formula of elasticity: percentage change in quantity demanded divided by the percentage change in price. All right, next, what is the formula? So like we just did, the formula: percentage change in quantity demanded of the same good of product X divided by the percentage change in price of product X. Now, the next question is why percentages? हम percentages में क्यों ले रहे हैं? And उसका answer is very clear. It is because अगर कोई भी change हम percentage में नहीं लेते, अगर absolute value में लेते हैं, so for example, Coca-Cola है, Coca-Cola की bottle let's say 20 rupees की आती है, और एक laptop है, उसका price let's say 1 lakh rupees है. अब हम बोल रहे हैं कि 10 rupees का फर्क आया. अगर Coca-Cola की bottle में 10 rupees का फर्क आएगा, तो वो 20 से 30 rupees की हो जाएगी. और अगर लैपटॉप में 10 रुपीस का फर्क आएगा तो वो 1 लाख से 1 लाख 10 हो जाएगा. तो दिस चेंज इज बिग, दिस चेंज इज स्मॉल. एब्सोल्यूट वैल्यू से हमें नहीं पता चलता दैट द चेंज इज बिग और स्मॉल. इवन तो दोनों में 10 का चेंज था, बट इन कोका कोला दैट चेंज इज बिग, इन अ लैपटॉप दैट चेंज इज स्मॉल, right? So that is why we deal in percentages and not the absolute value. Now let's see the price elasticities of different goods. तो ये हमें क्या दिखा रहा है? ये दिखा रहा है कि अगर थिएटर का प्राइस 1% से बढ़ता है तो एक्चुअली हम अगर नीचे देखें तो उसकी डिमांड में ज्यादा कमी नहीं आएगी. एक बेटर एग्जांपल से समझाऊं तो अगर थिएटर एंड ओपेरा की टिकट्स 100% से इंक्रीज होगी प्राइस, अगर थिएटर एंड ओपेरा का प्राइस 100% से इंक्रीज होगा तो डिमांड विल फॉल बाय ओनली 18%. अगर कॉफी का प्राइस 100% से इंक्रीज होगा तो कॉफी की डिमांड विल ओनली फॉल बाय 25%. लेकिन अगर मटर विच इज ग्रीन पीस का प्राइस 100% से इंक्रीज होगा, द डिमांड विल फॉल बाय 280%. अगर रेस्टोरेंट के खाने का प्राइस 100% से इंक्रीज होगा, द डिमांड विल फॉल बाय 163%. सो कहां प्राइस बढ़ाया जा सकता है, कहां प्राइस नहीं बढ़ाया जा सकता? इलास्टिसिटी टेल्स अस. ऑलराइट, नाउ लेट्स गो टू ये इलास्टिसिटी जो इतनी डिफरेंट होती है फॉर डिफरेंट गुड्स, क्यों होती है? क्या, व्हाट आर द रीजंस, व्हाट आर द डिटर्मिनेंट्स ऑफ दिस प्राइस इलास्टिसिटी ऑफ डिमांड? फर्स्ट, इज इट अ नेसेसिटी और इज इट अ लग्जरी? what are the availability of close substitutes? हम किस चीज से उस गुड को सब्स्टिट्यूट कर सकते हैं? What is the market size of that good? And what is the time that we are looking at? Now let's understand each of these factors in detail. The first, availability of close substitutes. Now, अगर कोई चीज के बहुत सब्स्टिट्यूट्स है तो उसकी इलास्टिसिटी हाई होगी कि लो होगी? अगर किसी चीज के बहुत सारे सब्स्टिट्यूट्स है तो उसकी इलास्टिसिटी हाई होगी. हाई इलास्टिसिटी का मतलब कि अगर आप प्राइस को चेंज करोगे बाय 10% तो डिमांड शायद फॉल कर जाएगी बाय 20% और 50%, राइट? सो जितने ज्यादा सब्स्टिट्यूट्स उतनी ही हाई इलास्टिसिटी. ऑलराइट, जितने ज्यादा सब्स्टिट्यूट्स उतनी ही ज्यादा हाई इलास्टिसिटी. करेक्ट? ऑलराइट, लेट्स मूव फर्दर. पैसेज ऑफ टाइम. The more time passes, the more elastic a demand is. For example, अगर आपको जाना है दिल्ली से बॉम्बे, ओके, अगर आपको अभी का अभी जाना है, आपके पास टाइम नहीं है, आपको अभी ही कंज्यूम करनी है चीज, तो आपको कोई भी प्राइस देना पड़ेगा. एवरीबडी नोज एयरलाइन की टिकट्स का मैक्सिमम प्राइस होता है, उसी दिन का बुक कर लो तो 15,000, 20,000, 30,000 भी आपको देना पड़ सकता है. बट अगर आपके पास टाइम है तो आप फ्यूचर में अगर जा सकते हो, यू विल गेट अ लोअर प्राइस. सो इफ यू हैव टाइम टू एडजस्ट योर डिमांड, अगर आपके पास टाइम है अपने डिमांड को डेफर करने का, तो इलास्टिसिटी हमेशा हाई होगी. लेकिन अगर आपके पास टाइम नहीं है डेफर करने का तो इलास्टिसिटी लो होगी. लो इलास्टिसिटी मतलब वो प्राइस कितना भी बढ़ा दे, प्राइस को कितना भी बढ़ा दे, डिमांड की एडजस्टमेंट नहीं होगी. तो अगर आपको अभी ही जाना है दिल्ली बॉम्बे, प्राइस अगर 20,000 भी हो और आपको जाना ही पड़े तो आपको देना पड़ेगा. तो प्राइस से आपका डिमांड तब अफेक्ट नहीं होगा. जब प्राइस से डिमांड अफेक्ट नहीं होता उसे कहते हैं लो इलास्टिक. और जब when price changes and demand changes by a lot, that is called highly elastic. And when price changes but demand does not change by a lot, that is called low elastic. Okay, so time. Is it urgent to buy something right now? Then the elasticity will be low. If it is not urgent, elasticity will be high. All right, next, luxury versus necessity. Necessity good, अगर आपको खरीदना पड़े, सेम लॉजिक है, खरीदना पड़े तो खरीदोगे ही, प्राइस बढ़ भी जाए तो खरीदना ही पड़ेगा. Luxury good, if it is becomes too expensive, ठीक है, मत खरीदो. नेसेसिटी तो नहीं है, राइट? खरीदना हो खरीदो, नहीं खरीदना मत खरीदो. लग्जरी गुड का तो ऐसा है, बट नेसेसिटी गुड तो खरीदना ही पड़ता है, राइट? सो इसीलिए लग्जरी गुड्स हैव अ हायर इलास्टिसिटी, नेसेसिटी गुड्स हैव अ लोअर इलास्टिसिटी. ऑलराइट, example, insulin and yachts. अगर both insulin and yachts have a price increase by 20%, किसकी क्वांटिटी ज्यादा फॉल करेगी? इंसुलिन की, yachts की. Now insulin is a necessity good, जिसको चाहिए वो चाहिए, तो क्या उसकी क्वांटिटी उतनी फॉल करेगी? No. But yachts is a luxury good. You may or may not buy a yacht. All right, definition of a market. Is it a narrowly defined market or a largely defined market? For example, अगर आप नैरो डिफाइन करते हो मार्केट को तो उसकी इलास्टिसिटी हाई होगी. कैसे? सपोज करो हमने सोचा कि व्हाट इज द डिमांड फॉर ब्लू जीन्स. अगर ब्लू जीन्स का प्राइस बढ़ गया, व्हाइट जीन्स खरीद लो, ब्लैक जीन्स खरीद लो, ब्लू पैंट खरीद लो, ब्लू क्यूलॉट खरीद लो, जॉगर्स खरीद लो, कुछ भी खरीद लो, right? So blue jeans will have many substitutes. It's a narrowly defined market, okay? But if you make the market definition broad, let's say clothes का प्राइस बढ़ गया तो क्लोथ्स का तो सब्स्टिट्यूट नहीं है, तो क्लोथ्स की इलास्टिसिटी इतनी ज्यादा नहीं होगी, बट ब्लू जीन्स की इलास्टिसिटी ज्यादा होगी. So narrowly, in a narrowly defined market, consumers have more substitutes, so it is more elastic. Okay, I hope this is clear that any good, let's say लैपटॉप्स में इलास्टिसिटी कम होगी, बट अ पर्टिकुलर लैपटॉप जैसे डेल लैपटॉप, उसकी इलास्टिसिटी ज्यादा होगी, बिकॉज डेल का प्राइस बढ़ गया तो एचपी खरीद लो, एचपी का प्राइस बढ़ गया तो लेनोवो खरीद लो, राइट? सो द नैरोली यू डिफाइन अ मार्केट, द मोर इज द इलास्टिसिटी. द ब्रॉडली यू डिफाइन अ मार्केट, लेस इज द इलास्टिसिटी. ऑलराइट, नेक्स्ट, शेयर ऑफ अ गुड इन अ कंज्यूमर्स बजट. अगर आपका व्हाट यू स्पेंड, कितना पैसा आप उस पर खर्च कर रहे हो उस गुड पे, वो ज्यादा नहीं है. सपोज आप खर्च कर रहे हो 10 रुपए किसी गुड पे, अभी उसका प्राइस बढ़ भी गया, 11 रुपए हो गया, तो आप नहीं सोचोगे ठीक है 15 रुपए हो गया, आपका फेवरेट चिप्स है, 10 से 15 रुपए हो गया, ठीक है चिप्स तो आपको खाना ही है. 50% इंक्रीज में भी इतना आपको नहीं लगेगा, क्यों? क्योंकि 5 रुपए का तो डिफरेंस है 10 से 15. बट वही चीज अगर कोई बड़ी चीज है, आपको घर खरीदना है, वो था 50 लाख का, अभी 75 लाख का हो गया, दैट्स अ बिग चेंज, इवन दो इट इज स्टिल 50% चेंज, राइट? कहीं 50% मैटर नहीं करता है, क्योंकि द शेयर ऑफ योर इनकम दैट यू आर स्पेंडिंग ऑन दैट गुड इज लेस. 15 रुपए आपकी सैलरी में से बहुत छोटा अमाउंट है, तो इतना मैटर नहीं करेगा. बट 50 लाख का की चीज अगर बढ़ जाए तो वो मैटर करेगी. So that means share of a good in a consumer's budget. Just goods that only take a small fraction of a consumer's budget are less elastic, and goods that take a large fraction are more elastic. Okay, so goods which are cheap, उनका प्राइस बढ़ भी जाए इतना फर्क नहीं पड़ेगा, but goods which take a large part of your income, उनका प्राइस बढ़ेगा, then it will be a challenge. So those goods are more elastic. In general, larger is the share of money spent on that good, more is the elasticity. So blue jeans versus clothing, we just did this example. Then is the time constraint, okay? So this is the demand of petrol, okay? Now we were talking about time, okay? That's sometimes कब आपको कंज्यूम करना है उस पर डिपेंड करती है इलास्टिसिटी. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, अगर प्राइस ऑफ पेट्रोल बढ़ गया तो विद इन अ वीक, ये वीक का डिमांड कर्व है, विद इन अ वीक द डिमांड कर्व इज गोइंग टू बी वेरी स्टीप. वेरी स्टीप डिमांड कर्व मींस इनइलास्टिक डिमांड कर्व. मतलब कि अगर प्राइस ऑफ पेट्रोल बढ़ भी गया तो आप कुछ नहीं कर सकते, आपको फिर भी परचेज करना ही पड़ेगा. तो क्वांटिटी ऑफ पेट्रोल फॉल करेगी, बट बाय नॉट बाय लॉट. तो रिस्पॉन्स आप नहीं कर सकते. क्यों? क्योंकि अगर प्राइस ऑफ पेट्रोल बढ़ भी गया तो आप क्या करोगे? आपको अगर कहीं जाना है, आपको जाना ही पड़ेगा, गाड़ी तो निकालनी पड़ेगी, पेट्रोल भराना ही पड़ेगा. क्या करोगे आप? घर से ऑफिस, ऑफिस से घर जो करना है वो करना ही पड़ेगा, राइट? सो विद इन अ वीक डिमांड फॉर पेट्रोल इज गोइंग टू बी इनइलास्टिक, बट विद इन अ मंथ हो सकता है आप कारपूलिंग ज्वाइन कर लो, हो सकता है मेट्रो को यूज करना स्टार्ट कर दो, हो सकता है आप ट्रेन यूज करना, मुंबई में लोकल ट्रेन यूज कर सकते हैं, लोकल ट्रेन यूज करना चालू कर दो, राइट? सो विद इन अ मंथ आप और सोच सकते हो कि कैसे आप अपना पेट्रोल का खर्चा कम करो. सो फॉर अ मंथ द डिमांड कर्व इज मोर इलास्टिक, इट इज फ्लैटर. मोर इलास्टिक मतलब अगर प्राइस इंक्रीज करेगा तो क्वांटिटी डिमांड ज्यादा से घटेगी, जो वीकली कम घट रही थी मंथली ज्यादा घट जाएगी. एंड अगर आप उसको ईयरली देखोगे तो और इलास्टिक हो जाएगा, लोग और सब्स्टिट्यूट्स ढूंढेंगे, मे बी ईवी कार पे स्विच कर लेंगे, मे बी दे विल चेंज देयर हाउस, दे विल स्टार्ट लिविंग क्लोज टू द प्लेस ऑफ वर्क, ताकि ट्रैवल नहीं करना पड़े, मे बी बच्चों के स्कूल के पास चले जाएं, कुछ भी. सो यू विल हैव मोर टाइम टू थिंक ऑन हाउ टू सेव मनी. सो द इलास्टिसिटी increases as the time duration increases. The more time you have to think, to save money, to switch, the more is the elasticity. The less time you have, less is the elasticity. Okay, so price of gas, we just did this example graphically. There are more reasons. Consumer habits, if you are habituated to something, then of course uska price increase bhi karega, then the demand is less elastic. Tied demand, for example, if the price of something is tied to something else, like for here the example is printer and cartridges. So if you already have bought a printer, आपके पास HP का printer है, तो अगर HP की ink cartridge increase भी हो गई तो you don't have a choice, right? Unless you change the printer itself. But immediately the printer भी change नहीं करोगे. So the demand for the ink cartridge, which is why ink cartridges are very expensive, it is tied to the printer. हमेशा printer cheap होता है, cartridge expensive होती है. Price range. Goods which are in a very high price range or a very low price range have inelastic demand, but in the middle range have elastic demand. What this means is कि low price range में तो because इतना substantially हम spend नहीं करते. Very high price range में मतलब कि अगर Ferrari है वो price से नहीं बिकती, वो बिकती है क्योंकि people want it. जितनी expensive ज़्यादा उतनी ज़्यादा उसकी demand होती है. So very high and very low price range में inelastic demand होती है generally, middle में ज़्यादा elastic होती है. So now जो हमने किया है the determinants of demand, let's just revise them once. So हमारे जो main determinants थे availability of flow substitutes, जितने ज़्यादा substitutes उतनी ज़्यादा elasticity. जितना time आप ले सकते हैं to make your decision, the larger the time, the more the elasticity. Necessary good, less elasticity. Luxury good, more elasticity. Ultra luxury good, zero elasticity. Ferrari का price बढ़ता जाए कोई फर्क नहीं है. Market size, the narrowly you define it, the more is the elasticity. The larger you define it, less is the elasticity. Share of a good in consumer's budget, जितना कम share of expenses होगा, उतनी कम elasticity होगी. The higher is it a part of your budget, the more conscious you become and the more is the elasticity. All right, and then habits, demand, and price range. All right, so now let's see a few elasticities in the short run and the long run. In the long run, the elasticity for anything is always more than the elasticity in the short run. So you see for air travel, short run, like I said, कुछ नहीं कर सकते अगर आपको कल ही flight लेनी है तो, but हाँ, बाद में अगर flight का price बढ़ेगा तो आप नहीं चाहोगे. And so on, for movies, for gas, for medical care also, everything long run has a larger elasticity. Okay. So already we've discussed this, demand is more elastic if the good is a luxury good, if it is longer time period, larger number of flow substitutes, the more narrowly defined the market size is. All right, so now let's take out a few elasticities. What is the elasticity of demand for pizza? So let's say the price initially was 400, the new price is 380, okay? So price of pizzas went down. By how much? So you have to take out the percentage change in price. Okay, so it was a 5% decrease in price. Okay, so the quantity will increase by from 10,000 to 12,000 passes. Sorry, not pizza, ski passes. Sorry. So for ski passes, the price went down by 5%. The demand increased by 20%. So this is elastic. This is good. So ski passes should become cheaper because it will be better for business. Okay. Now let's go on to calculate elasticity. So if price increases by 10%, quantity falls by 15%, percentage change in quantity is 15%, percentage change in price is 5%, elasticity is 1.5. Now there is a negative sign here. Why a negative sign? Because if price increases, then quantity falls. Negative relation है. तो actually में एक negative sign है. वो negative sign हम लगाते नहीं है क्योंकि फिर change हो जाता है कि increase क्या है, decrease क्या है. मतलब अगर -1.5 से -3 हो गया तो हम बोलेंगे इलास्टिसिटी इंक्रीज हो गई, बट एक्चुअली -1.5 इज बिगर देन -3. सो इसीलिए हम नेगेटिव साइंस को हटा देते हैं, हम एब्सोल्यूट वैल्यूज में बात करते हैं. Okay, so we generally talk about elasticity in absolute values. The negative sign is assumed to exist. Okay, so we will drop the minus sign and we will talk about elasticities in fixed quantities. So let's do an example. I will do an example with you. So for example, let's say price was initially the price was 100, the new price is 120. So what is the change in price? The change in price is the new price minus the old price upon the old price into 100. That is how we take the percentage change in price. So new price is 120, old price is 100, old price is 100 into 100. So this is 20%. Okay, so this will be 20 by 100 into 100. So this is 20%. Okay. Similarly, when the price was 100, quantity demanded was 500. When the price is 120, quantity demanded is 400. Okay. So what is the percentage change in Q? Same formula, new minus old upon old into 100. So new is 400, old is 500 upon 500 into 100. So which is minus 100 by 500 into 100, right? So how much is this? This is again 20. So minus 20%. Okay. So Now, what is elasticity? Elasticity is percentage change in quantity upon percentage change in price, which is equal to minus 20 upon 20, which is equal to minus 1. So the elasticity of this example is minus 1. Minus 1 means the percentage change in quantity is equal to the percentage change in price. So price increased by 20%, quantity fell by 20%. Okay, so you take out the percentage. So what is the method of calculating elasticity? You take out the percentage change in price, you take out the percentage change in quantity, and you divide the percentage change in quantity by price, and the figure that you get is elasticity. All right, so now going back. So like we did, it is the end value. How do you calculate elasticity? It is the end value minus the start value upon the start value into 100. That is the way of calculating percentages. So if you go from A to B, the change in price is this. The increase in price is 50. 50 by 200 is 25%. The change in quantity, on the other hand, is from 12 to 8. So the fall is 33%. So what's the elasticity? The elasticity is 1.33. So what we have here is, so now what do we see here? If you take out the elasticity from point A to point B, okay, so you take point A as the old, you take point B as the new. So you take the end value minus the start value upon the start value into 100. So the percentage change in price will be 25. The percentage change in Q is 33 and the elasticity is 1.33. Now, but if we say that we want to measure the elasticities between point A to B, why can't point B be the first point? You don't really know, right? Initially, the price could be 250, then it falls to 200, or the price could be 200, then it increases to 250. It could be either way. So if I take B as the old point and A as the new point, then the percentage change in P, which was earlier 25%, drops to only 20%. The percentage change in Q, which was 33%, is now 50%. So the elasticity is now coming as 2.5. So along the same demand curve, what you take as the starting point and what you take as the ending point completely alters the measure of elasticity. Okay, so what do? We do like probably what most people would do. We take an average of the two. And how do we take an average? We'll just show you that. So to go around this problem so that it's not that there are different everybody's working with different elasticity along the same line. Everybody's claiming to have different elasticity. Between 2 points, when you take out the elasticity, you work with midpoints. Okay, so we don't work with one value as the we don't work with one value, we work with midpoints. Okay, so you put between A and B. Okay, let's say this is we put this as Q1 and we put this as P1. You put this as Q2 and you put this as P2. So what we do is we do that you take Q2 minus Q1, but you don't divide it with any particular starting point. You divide it with the middle value of the two. So you take an average of Q1 and Q2 and that becomes your midpoint. So the difference in formula is this. Initially, the formula was this. Sorry about that. Initially, the formula is you do end value minus start value upon start value, right? Now, we don't know what's the start value, right? So we don't know whether it is going from A to B or whether it is going from B to A, okay? All we know is that the change between A to B is 50. It could be plus 50, it could be minus 50. But in terms of quantity, in terms of price, the change between A to B is 50. Okay. Now, if you take this as the base, the change becomes 20%. If you take this as the base, the change becomes 25%. So the problem is the base, what base to take. So the base that we take is the average of these two, which is 225. Okay. So the formula of elasticity that we are going to use is the midpoint formula, which says you take the end value minus start value. Like I said, it doesn't matter which one you take as end value and start value because it will just be a difference of minus sign. So it will be either a positive or a negative number. So you take either of the value as end value, either of the value as start value. And instead of dividing by the start value, we divide it by the midpoint. And the midpoint is Q1 plus Q2 by 2 for quantities, P1 plus P2 by 2 for prices. Okay, so what's the formula for elasticity? So when we do the percentage change in quantity upon the percentage change in price, percentage change in quantity is Q2 minus Q1. Instead of Q1, Okay, earlier we used to write it as Q1. Now we don't write it as Q1. We write it as Q1 plus Q2 by 2. And my percentage change in price is P2 minus P1 upon P1 plus P2 by 2. Okay, into 100. This is the midpoint formula of calculating elasticity between any 2 points. Okay, so if you use the midpoint formula to calculate elasticity, the elasticity comes as 1.8. So 1.8 is for the same question. So if you remember, when I did from A to B, it was 1.3. When I did from B to A, it was 2.5. Okay, so now, like I said, it's almost like the midpoint of these two. So it's 1.8. Okay, so using the midpoint formula, the elasticity is coming as 1.8. So I'm not taking a midpoint of these two. What I'm doing is I'm taking the midpoint of, I'm changing the formula and I'm doing Q2 minus Q1 by midpoint. Okay, divided by P1, P2 minus P1 by midpoint. Okay, so if you see the numbers here are, so 250 here minus 200, which is here, divided by the midpoint, which is 225 into 100. So the percentage change in price is 22.2. The percentage change in quantity is going to be 12 minus 8 divided by the average of 8 and 12, which is going to be 10. Okay, so 40%. So percentage change in P is 22%. Percentage change in Q is 40%. So the elasticity is 1.8. You might say this is a compromise, but this is the best that we can do. Okay, so that is how we calculate elasticity. So just to reiterate, earlier we calculate elasticity as percentage change in quantity upon percentage change in price, where the formula was Q2 minus Q1 by Q1, P2 minus P1 by P1 into 100. But now, instead of P1, we change it to something else. We change it to the midpoint, which is Q1 plus Q2 by 2, P1 plus P2 by 2. So when if we are asked to calculate elasticity, this is the formula that we use, the midpoint formula. Okay, and we will do some examples of the midpoint formula. Okay, so this is some information given. Use the following information to calculate the elasticity. So let's do that. P is 400, P is 600, QD is 10,600, QD is 8,400. What is the elasticity? So what is the percentage change in price? 600 minus 400 divided by the middle value, which is 500. So 40% change in price. Percentage change in Q is 10,600 minus 8,400 divided by the average, which is 9,500. Percentage change in quantity is 23.6. So elasticity of demand is percentage change in Q by percentage change in P, which is only 0.58. So price increased by 40%, but quantity demanded fell by only 23.16%. So this is inelastic demand. All right, now let's move on. Arc elasticity measure. What is the arc elasticity measure? Now, the demand curve that we saw in the previous diagram was a straight line demand curve, right? But what if I made the demand curve as an arc? Okay, so how would that look like? Let's say the demand curve is like this. Oh, that was a change. Let's say the demand curve looked like this. Okay, let's say the demand curve looks like this. Okay, so if the demand curve looked like this and we wanted to measure the elasticity between any 2 points, let's say A and B. Okay, so we wanted to measure the elasticity between any 2 points. How do we do that? So what we do is we do the same formula like we did in the last time. We put, let's say, the B value as Q1 and this as P1. We take the A value as Q2. We take that as P2. And we use the same price elasticity formula between any 2 points on the arc as well. So it's percentage change in Q by QM, which is the midpoint, percentage change in P by PM, which is the midpoint. So this will again be the same, that Q2 minus Q1 by the midpoint QM divided by P2 minus P1 by the midpoint PM into 100. So the same formula applies whether the elasticity is arc or linear. All right, so QM is the midpoint. So this is the question. So along the arc, quantity demanded falls from 60 to 40, price increases from 3 to 5. What is the elasticity along those 2 points on the arc? And the answer is this. So 60 to 40, 60 minus 40 divided by 50, which is the midpoint. 3 minus 5 divided by 4, which is the midpoint. The answer will always be negative, but like I said, we take the modulus values. Okay, so the answer is 4 by 5. That is the elasticity of demand, right? All right, which is 80% or 0.8.